here this morning to introduce Ross and Beryl Anderson. Ross is the leader and founder of the New Melbourne Jazz Band, which was a fixture of the Melbourne jazz scene for 41 years.
Yes.
So welcome to you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, to start off, Ross, what I'm interested to know is that how did you get interested in jazz?
Well, in the late 40s or early 50s, I lived in Miami, Echuca,
Yes.
that area, and Graham Bell's band came to play at the local hall in Echuca.
Yep.
And I was very fortunate to be able to go there, and that was it,
Right.
the start of it all.
And so you were hooked.
I was hooked, yeah.
Right. And so what did you start off, you spent your life playing the bass, but did you start off on the bass?
Well, actually, as a kid, I went to learn piano. My mum played piano, and
Yep.
she sent me to a teacher. And I'd been going to him for a few months when I turned up for a lesson one day, and he opened up the sheet of, like, the book of music that he'd given me. And he said, all right, let's hear this one here. So I started playing it, and I'd get, I don't know, halfway into it or something. And he said, hang on, just stop, show me where you are on the sheet of music. And I've gone, He's picked it up and folded it closed, right, handed it to me. He said, go back, save your mother a lot of money and me a lot of time, okay? And so...
So you were a natural musician in a really.
Well,
Yes.
it's something like that.
Some people have it, some people don't.
Yeah, but from there on, like I sang in a quartet, 2 boys and 2 girls, with the piano player. His name was Stan Anderson,
Yes.
and he, like, we knew each other, and I started working in carpentry and all that sort of stuff. And then I got into, he formed a band,
Yes.
and that's sort of,
Okay. So was there anybody else in your family that was musical?
only Mum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She played the piano.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So that's where you kicked off. So that was really your first contact, hearing the Bell Band with jazz musicians.
Yeah, and then I listened to Nat King Cole and Fats Waller, Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
And when Stan had a job, he'd formed a quartet, and his brother played drums. He played the piano in it.
Yeah.
He had a trumpet player and a bass player.
Right.
And their first gig as a quartet was on the Friday night for a spinster's ball. Okay?
Yeah.
And on the Monday, I was working in a joinery shop at this stage. On the Monday lunchtime, I ran down to the shop where he worked, and I ran and out of it. I said, how'd it go? He said, and he stuttered too as well. It was an absolute disaster. I said, what happened? The bass player got drunk and abused the head spinster lady. Okay? And I said to him, what are you going to do for a bass player? Because I knew that the only other bass player around was down in Bendigo.
Yes.
And I knew they had 3 more jobs coming
Yeah.
up. And he said to me, I don't know. And I said, something made me spit out of my mouth. I wouldn't mind having a go at that. He looked at me and said, good God, Ross, I never give you a thought. I'll tell you, I'll bring the bass round to your place tomorrow after work
Yes.
and see what happens. And I played my first job on the Saturday night.
That was it. So
Yeah.
And from then on, the piano got second place, and you kicked off with the
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. Now, just looking as I did in preparation at some of the bands and musicians that you've been associated with, and there's so many.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm amazed about it. Over a 41-year career, I suppose it's not surprising, but apart from your own band, which we'll talk about in some detail, what other musicians have you been associated with over the years?
Well, we got invited to be support bands for other touring bands like coming to the Dulles Brooks Hall, like the Dutchwood College.
Yes.
5 times we were support band to them.
Yes.
Acker built twice.
Yes.
Who was the other guy?
Kenny Ball,
Kenny
Kenny Ball.
Kenny Ball. Yeah. And like with Acker, that was incredible. We did the first one, and we're coming off stage and he's coming on. I'm last off and he's last on. And we meet halfway up the stairs.
Yes.
And he grabs me and he says, "They said you were good, but they didn't say you were that good." And
Wow.
the next time he came, which looked like the following
Yes.
year, 5 minutes to go, we're doing our little bit, and he said, "Ross, do you think you guys could play the first half? We're a bit tired." And I turned around to the guys, 5 minutes to go,
Yeah.
and I said, "Acker wants to know, can we do the first half?" And they said, "Yeah, righto." And that was it. Like, that's how good
Those-
the guides were.
These are the unexpected things that
Yeah,
yeah. So, thinking about the musical style that the New Melbourne had, because whilst you had a lot of different musicians over the years, you had a very consistent sound.
Yeah.
Now, so what were your influences that, who did you draw on to create that sound?
Well, quite honestly, I really, like Kenny Ball would be one of them, because like their presentation and everything was,
Yes.
and like, and Acker built too, the other guy, love,
Eric Welsh.
Alex Welsh.
Alex.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I had a lot of recordings of them and listened to them,
Yes.
you know, and because like Derek, John Murray, and Ian Walker, they were all on the same footpath,
Right.
and so it was, we'd just go in and they'd, I heard this tune, oh yeah, how does it go? And bang, it'd be done.
I think
Yeah.
your sound was original anyway. I think it just had your own.
You had
That sound happened.
your
It
own
just was
sound
wonderful.
happened. It was one of those
Yeah,
things just
yeah.
that you all, it was a blending of,
Yeah.
of all of you together.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
like Beryl said, like when I asked, would I put together, could I put together a Dixieland band for a one-night stand down at the Limerick Arms?
Yes.
And I said, oh yeah, righto, we'll give it a go. And Beryl said to me, well, go for it. Like, you know,
Yes.
your band, it's your band, so
Yes.
go. And we did.
Yes.
It was like,
One by one, he got got John Murray, he got Ian Walker and Derek Reynolds. They all followed him over. They were a bit unhappy in the band at the time, in the other band in Storyville, for various reasons.
Yes.
So they came over.
They came over to Ross, and so
Yeah.
you had a really a ready-made band.
that,
Now, Beryl, just to ask you about it, where did you fit into all this?
I think more with encouragement, because I didn't know anything about jazz, to be honest with you. I always listened to classical
You were a
music.
jazz widow.
Yeah. And I think, well, in those days you didn't have computers and things to send out newsletters, so I used to write a newsletter once a month to the fans that we had from the Bridge Hotel, and that base grew and grew, and in the end I was sending out hundreds of, writing out envelopes and sending out gig guides, and our audience grew. It was just wonderful. They became friends. Everybody knew everybody. When you went to a gig,
Yes.
it was like going into somebody's lounge room.
Yes.
Everybody
It
knew.
was under like a private party
Oh.
every time you had.
Fabulous,
Yeah.
fabulous.
So what involvement did you have? I know you're always very snappy with your uniforms and
Yeah.
things, so were you involved with that?
Oh, absolutely. I would go and buy their shirts and ties and make sure they had all various colours and the ties all matched. And at every opportunity I would promote them wherever I went. I got some good deals. When we went overseas, I wanted them to have a really good outfit for that first trip to America. And I went to Sportscraft. I met a lovely man there called Bob Bowler. I'll never forget him. And he was very interested, and they'd just become ambassadors to Victoria. They'd just been given that certificate
Yes.
on the wall there. And I told him that, and I said, they really need a nice outfit, and So he gave them all a beautiful jacket, yellow. It was all in yellow,
Yes.
and even got. And then I went to Glow. He'd blow me down if he wasn't working there. He'd left the sports club, and he gave us a good deal on all the Glow Weave shirts.
Yes.
And you won't believe this, but then a few years later I went to a tie place I found, and there he was, working with the ties. So we got all these lovely ties.
Well, do you think that a band having a distinctive uniform was part of the success of the band?
It was always commented on, your
Yeah.
band, if they play as well as they look,
Yeah.
they're going to be wonderful.
There was, that happened in Newcastle. We went up there on a tour
Yes.
and played at the Newcastle Festival.
Yes.
And on the Sunday morning, we're second band on, and the first band's come off, and I'm standing on the floor handing stuff up to the guys on the stage. And there's a group of ladies sitting in the front row that had come from out of town on a bus just for that day. And one lady said to the other, if they sound half as good as they look, we're in for a ball.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it's all about. Presentation, presentation, presentation. And this lady here is the one that got it all together. Like, if it hadn't have been for Beryl and the way we presented,
Yes.
and also the rest of the work,
Yeah.
like, you know, but like when the sound, okay, that got us the first trip to Sacramento, but then Beryl went and did all the, you know,
All
Promoting.
that PR.
Promotion.
So you were a bit of a pioneer about being in the social media before it was even invented, weren't you? Yes, that's very good. So that presentation of it. Well, just thinking about some of the highlights of the New Melbourne Jazz Band in your career, Ross. What would you say the highlights were? You talked a little bit about Sacramento. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit about that?
Well, like apart, everywhere we went, we had a full house. Like it was just incredible.
How did you get invited to Sacramento?
Through the CD, the Bruce Martin, a very dear friend of the band, and still is. He sat in front of the band at the Limerick Arms with a radio cassette player.
Yeah.
Took the cassette over to Sacramento, gave it to Judy Borcher, the lady that booked international bands, and about 2 months after the Sacramento Festival, we got a phone call from her and wanted to know, would we like to come to Sacramento? And now we're
Yeah.
hello.
She
Yeah,
became a bosom buddy. She came here and stayed with us for a holiday, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So what year was that you went to Sacramento?
1984.
1984, so that was it. So when you were there in America, and were you well received by the American?
Yeah. One of the incredible things that happened, prior to the festival,
that's
we played in various venues for the Bank of America.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And on a Saturday morning, we're going out of town to a suburb, and it's in a car park, right, in a shopping centre, a
Yeah.
great big car park, and these two black American guys are setting up all the chairs and everything.
Yeah.
right? And it's 105 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
oh,
Okay. And John Murray said to me, find out if they know where we could get a couple of beers.
Yeah.
Right? So I went over to him and I explained to him. He said, oh, there's nowhere around here, mate, that they sell beer. I'm sorry about that. Oh, okay. So we go on and do our bit, whatever we've got to do. And we finish and we're packing up our gear, and he comes over and he said, I've rung a friend of mine and they bought you over some beers over there. So that's great.
Yeah, that was.
We go back the next year. We're playing the same sort of thing, but now in a different area for the Bank of America.
Yeah.
Through a car park drive-in with a drive-by.
Bottle shop.
No, where you get your money.
Oh yeah, ATM.
Yeah. Well, it was a day.
Yeah,
People there.
bank.
Yeah. Anyway, So we're unpacking the vehicle with our instruments and everything, and I look up, and there's these two guys that were setting up the chairs out at the other venue the year before. They're doing it here, right? And they just waved like that and then pointed.
Pointed at the
And
beers.
they had a great big can full of beer and ice,
Yep.
eh?
Oh,
Like-
isn't that fantastic?
Oh,
So when you were in Sacramento, did you go to any other parts of America or in North America at all?
we went down to, we took the opportunity to go down to New Orleans.
Oh, right. Did you play at New Orleans?
No.
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 You just
We
went
just-
down.
Reading
What about-
and Eureka and Reading, and
Yeah,
they're all in.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but
They went to other festivals.
that was after the second time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
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 We got invited to other festivals as well.
What other festivals did you get involved
Well,
in?
Reading and Eureka, and then we would,
Vancouver
what did? Where?
to Canada,
Oh, yeah.
just because they all saw the band in
Yeah,
Sacramento.
Yeah,
You were in Victoria, across on
yeah,
Victoria
yeah,
Island.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really great. And the Canadians liked your music as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's good. So that was probably the highlights. Tell us about some of the other highlights of your career, the New Melbourne Band. I mean, I know that you got started at the Limerick, but you had a gig at the Beach Hotel in Richmond for a long period.
For a long,
didn't you?
long
So
time,
tell us
yeah.
about that.
Well, that was just marvellous. It was a Thursday night, and it was full every time. And we'd park out the front. I'd bring the bass in. Beryl would come in, and he'd immediately give me the money to pay the band. Immediately, not
Yeah.
after. Immediately. There's your money. Okay, thanks. And I've got a beer for you and Beryl. Right, and that was
Yeah.
it. That was like
Trevor
that was a sort of
Virgil was his name.
Yeah.
Trevor Virgil.
yeah. Trevor Birchall was the
Yeah.
man.
Well, that's terrific. So, what were some of the other highlights of your career that places that sort of stand out that you enjoyed particularly?
Well, we got invited. Well, we went to Hong Kong.
Did you?
Yeah, 4 times I think.
Singapore.
Singapore.
So how did that come about? Was that your work,
Rex.
Beryl?
Well,
Rex Swan from Cathay, he had the boss of Cathay Pacific Airlines.
he was the drummer. See,
And
Yes,
he,
was.
he
yes, Rex
organised
Swan.
that.
And he got us to go to Hong Kong and then into
Singapore,
and the other one in
Vanuatu.
yeah.
Well, that's
Fiji.
amazing. How did now, Beryl? I understand that the band had a big concert at Dallas Brooks Hall. Do you want to
Yes.
tell us about how
Yes.
that came about?
Well, we were more or less holding big functions to try and buy uniforms and things for us and help with the fares to get over there. They got very well paid. They never had to pay their own way, or we got everything was found over there in those gigs overseas. But I wanted them to look so smart that I held fundraising, and I decided to do a big one, take a chance and do one at Dallas Brooks Hall.
Which
Everybody
takes a
said,
lot of
"Oh,
people to
you
fill
know,
up."
You're taking a risk.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I'm going to do it. So I organised it all and sent out all the newsletters, and I got tickets, and I didn't allocate seat numbers. They could just sit wherever they liked. And about half an hour before it started, there weren't many people in the hall, and I started to really panic. Anyway, I walked out the front and I looked up the road, and there were people coming in from all directions. We could see, they were heading towards it, and we filled it. It filled up,
That's
and they just
amazing
loved
because
it.
it held a couple of thousand people.
Yeah.
I can't remember now, but it was so exciting. And even when they were the support group for the Dutch Swing College band, people were saying they liked our band better. They liked that sound better,
Yes.
Especially when the Dutch Swing College changed from being what they used to be. They changed their
Style.
very much so. Yes, and the crowd didn't sort of warm to it. They still liked the Dixieland sort of music, Ross's, the foot tapping, fun sound, It was a
Yeah.
terrific sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
If
that as you said, that was a very brave
was
move.
because I'd done a few at the George Woods auditorium at the Yarra Valley School, and it's a big hall, and we'd filled that a few times. And I thought, well, we'll just go for it, and it worked, and that was one of my biggest thrills. I felt that was very successful. That one.
Yes. And when you were doing the Sacramento, who did all the organising and all the bookings? Was that you? And getting the visas and all that?
I helped. Yeah, I got all the information and got all the visas organised.
Yeah.
And the ticketing and all that. We had a very good friend that worked at a travel agency, and she did a lot of the booking of the tickets and things like that, and helped with that. She actually came on the tours as well.
Right. Yeah.
So a couple of people said they'd like to come with us, and we said, okay, there's no reason why you shouldn't. And then I thought to myself, there's probably other people who'd like to come. So I sent out a newsletter. We ended up with 43 people came on the tour with us. And that continued to happen over the years. Every tour we had fans of the band came with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it just highlights that with such a long history of the band, and it really was a sort of a cornerstone of the jazz scene in Melbourne for so many years, wasn't it?
Yes, but they never really got recognised. I always felt like they got very recognised overseas. They won in Canada. They were the most popular band. There were surveys, papers handed out to every gig, and they won.
Yes. Well, I think it just shows that Australia has always contributed, greatly to the music scene throughout the world.
Yeah.
Ross, I was going to ask you a little bit about it. That you personally, just a little bit in there. What musicians do you hold up as heroes in jazz? Who are your?
Well, Louis Armstrong.
Yep.
I got to see him twice.
Yes.
And
Kenny Ball.
Kenny Ball.
Yes.
Just the way he does his stuff as well. Ackerbilk, of course, because he's a lovely player, a really great player.
And what about Australian musicians that you admire?
Well, Graham Bell would have to be on the list there. And a lot of the guys, here in Melbourne, there's just there's so many good players.
Yes.
And there's still,
Yes.
fortunately, now young the Shiraz band.
Yes.
All of a sudden, bang.
Travis Woods.
Yeah. And Matt Dixon, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
He's the leader of it, and he's a fabulous young fella.
Yes, that's right.
And they're off to New Zealand shortly to do a tour over there. So
yeah, well, that's great, isn't it? Well, that sort of brings me to one of the questions that I often think about is that do you think that jazz has got a future in Australia?
I do, if we can get over the COVID thing.
Yes. You think COVID really set things back?
Yes. Unfortunately, because you've got to get a group together, and you've got to get a venue where the people, and now the age group are also unfortunately moving out.
Do you think it's going to be, is there a new generation? You spoke about the Shiraz, young people who are adopting it.
Yeah.
There's a move towards, more modern jazz, and so I suppose jazz, since the early days, has changed, hasn't it? And it's continuing to evolve. And so
Yes, Trad Dixieland is sort of the age group.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
But if there was a venue, like for instance, if Shiraz could get a good venue where they could entertain the older age group and get them to marry in with the younger ones.
Yes.
Like,
Well, that's always the key to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that struck me when I was looking through the bands is that how very stable the the band members were for many years. Do you want to just talk a little bit about the members of your band over that period of time?
Well, sadly, like Rex had to retire out of it. The band, he couldn't.
He played drums, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yep.
on some of the tours we did, he unfortunately couldn't get off work. So, like over the time, we've had a change of drummers for various reasons. Like, but we've always had good players that have fitted in with the band.
Yeah.
But like John Murray, front of house band, I remember he just mind blowing.
Yes.
Like he would have the people totally like their attention immediately.
Yes.
It didn't matter what was happening. He would just do it.
Yeah.
And
then when John wasn't around, and then Ian Smith was one of the early trumpet players,
Yeah.
and then Derek Reynolds came on, didn't he?
he came back.
He came into the band,
Yeah,
so he
yeah.
was with you for many years.
Oh
wasn't he?
yeah. Well, Ian Walker, John Murray, and Derek, they decided that they would give it away in 2000.
Yes.
Right?
Well, that was the time when you bought Bob Venue and Mike Edwards
Yeah,
and
and
Don Santon.
Doug Santon. Yeah,
Right,
that's
okay,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Charlie Farley on banjo.
Yeah. Well, actually, he was with us before.
What? Right.
He came with us in about '96, I think it was.
Yes.
Or might have even been a bit earlier than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But he a great banjo player and a good fun guy and a great entertainer. Sang all sorts of crazy songs as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was a great addition to have.
Yeah.
I noticed there, just looking at it here, that I haven't got a lot of detail about your later bands, but I know Richard Opak started playing drums.
He was with us too with
Yes.
Don Santon.
And Doug Holby.
Doug Holbury.
Yes.
Yeah. Ron Sanderland said to give it, he gave it up too. But like you get into all sorts of hassles and crazy things happen.
Yeah.
And just like that, bang, somebody's gone.
Yeah.
But like
Those things happen, but it was consistent over the period of time.
Yeah.
So your final retirement, was that due to COVID?
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah.
that was sort of just an appropriate time to hang up the
Well,
shingle. Not really.
No.
It was COVID that
Yeah.
finished you
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you play the trombone still?
Do I?
No, I'm sorry, the bass.
No, I can't. I've lost all the calluses off my fingers. And when I started, I didn't have any calluses. And on the first gig,
Yes.
like the first one,
Yeah.
right, the drummer says, somebody's bleeding.
And it was you.
And it was me. I'd taken the tops off my fingers.
Yeah. Yes, good. Now, I know that you always refer to Beryl as your first lady. Now, how did that come about?
Well, she, like,
Watching.
do it. Like, not only the band, but the bass. In '96, when I came home from a trip to America, I'd carted around a full-size bass and I just said to her, that's it, I'm not doing that again. I said, I just can't. I'm physically done.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's just too heavy, I can't handle it. And she said to me, you're a carpenter, why don't you make something smaller? So, you tell the story.
Well, it was late at night and he said, and I said to him, well, why don't you design one and do one? And in the morning he said to me, thanks very much for that. I haven't slept a wink all night. I've been designing a bass.
Yeah, that's good. So the bass, tell us a little bit about, for people who haven't seen photographs of your bass, well, what did you design and build, Ross?
Well, for repairs, I'd go to Ben Puglisi, the luthier, and now he's moved from where he was to now down in close to the city. But I sort of thought, oh well, I'll come up with something, so I drew it. So then I cut it out of a bit of plywood,
Yes.
the shape and everything.
Yes.
And I rang him and I said, I'll come up with this idea. And he said, oh, yeah, well, come down and have a chat. So I went down and had a chat with him. And then I did a bit more work on it, and I rang him again and I said, I've gone a bit further. And he said, bring it down and give me a look at it. So I went down and I walked in and he said, I think you're pretty serious about this, aren't you? I've got a workshop upstairs, you can use it there, but you do it on my terms,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So anyway, I've still got the front of the first one
Mm-hmm.
down in the shed.
You prototype.
Yeah. Well,
So how many did you make altogether?
64.
64.
Yeah.
So they're all spread out all over the.
Yeah, well, a lot of them, they're all over the world actually. Yeah.
So
And
is anybody else making them?
Not
Not really.
No, not that side.
Oh.
But the incredible part about it is the music teacher at the University in Canberra, Eric Archer, his name is, and he and his students have bought 13 of them. And I've made 2 5-strings for him.
Yes.
So, like, you know, he just rang me one day and said, do you think you can make a 5-string? And yeah, of course.
I didn't know they had 5 strings.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
That's good. So 64 bases later.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to make one?
4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's a labour of love. Was that there?
Oh yeah, all hand carved and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what we can really say in some notion about it all was that this wonderful musical career that you've had over so many years with the New Melbourne Band, that's been a partnership with the two of you.
Well,
Beryl has really been truly a first
absolutely.
lady.
Like if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be doing this today. Truly, because she not only inspires,
Yes.
but also all the work that she did.
Yes.
She talks about sending out gig guides and things like that.
Yes.
That means it's physically writing them out
Yes.
and then sending them and posting them.
Yeah. She was the true go-for person to be able to do it. Ross, tell us about your repertoire. You know,
Well,
how many songs did you have?
when we went on tour, we had a book of 220 tunes, and we'd form into sets, and we just kept playing. But the thing was that unless we got a request for a tune like, what was it, Love, Waltz and Matilda, and what else?
But funnily enough, they all loved it. I still call Australia home.
Yeah.
They sing along with that.
Yeah.
It's different ones that they just loved. You know.
Yeah.
They,
And it was
I can't
one
think
in Vancouver in Victoria when we were there the first time, and this group of people, we played 3 or 4 venues, and this group of people were there, and I went over and I said, look, there's other bands playing as well. How come you sort of, everywhere we go, you sit there? And this man said to me, well, we've been to this before, and we've heard the other bands as well, but you're the only band that hasn't repeated a tune.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here, because you play everything differently.
Did you play with chord charts, or was it off the top of your head?
Oh no, we had
You had chord charts.
Yeah, we just turned it over.
Yeah.
But it was like the front line, they were just unreal, like, you know, and I'd say at that stage, 90% of the tunes we knew off our head anyway.
Right.
Like, you know, you just,
one of the big things was John Murray too. He was the best scat vocalist. everybody commented on his scatting. They said they'd never heard anybody do it as well, and he's really good at that. And Charlie Farley, his real name's Chris.
Yes.
There was a character on Channel 2 at one time called Charlie Farley.
Yes.
So he got that name. But he sings little things like Fan Like Fanny and
Oh, yes.
all those little old music hall type
Yes,
English.
yes.
He is English.
Yes.
And they love that. They always request that. Mr. Wu,
Yes.
the Chinese laundryman.
Yes, yeah.
The George Formby song.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And-
good. Well, I think it's just amazing that you were able to hold those tunes in your head. I remember Stephen Grant was asked by a lady down there, who's Stephen Grant, piano player.
Yeah.
Played
And
with
she
the
said,
band.
Stephen, how do you know what to play? And he looked and he said, he said, I just close my eyes and hope for the best.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
He played with the band too.
Yeah.
He played with our band
Yeah,
on a few gigs. And
yeah,
he was only a very young man then.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're very fortunate to have people like him on the jazz scene. Well, it's been a great experience to have had the chance to talk to you both this morning, Ross and Beryl, and thank you so much for your time. It's a little bit of Melbourne jazz history that hopefully will record the contribution that you both made, and so thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you, Peter.
Our cameraman.
Down came a squatter, mounted on his thoroughbred. Down rode the troopers, 1, 2, 3. I say, whose is that jumbuck that you have in your tuck bag? You'll come waltzing Matilda with me, he sang. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. I say there, whose is that jumbuck that you have in your tuck bag? You'll come.